coverage is getting better each and every week. I think the players are figuring it out.
I think there's a huge edge in this thing for good putters and good short game wizards.
Dr. Chapinski. What's it going to do? Yes!
Welcome back to another episode of the TGL Show. I'm your host, Keith Stewart, PGA professional. Alongside me is, of course, the TGL expert, and he'll be in the house for match 4. This is the preview. That's right. Joe Idone, how are you doing on this fine day?
Beautiful, Keith. Love seeing that intro every time. Gives me chills. Excited to talk match 4. Season's going by so fast right now. Tuesday night, 7 p.m. We'll get our first sight of Jupiter Link. So excited to go through it with you.
Joe, speaking of seasons, right? This week kicks off the PGA Tour season. And sometimes I venture amongst the interwebs or the X and IG trails. And I noticed that you had some big news this past week out there on the internet.
Exciting, huge news for me personally, hopefully for the Read the Line brand as well. Myself and my partner, John Hazelbauer, who have hosted the Preferred Line show for the last 5 years, 4 hour long every week, dedicated to covering each and every PGA Tour event from kind of a betting perspective. We're happy to be full contributors to the Read the Line team this year. That show is going to stream live Monday nights at 8:30. Catch us there every week. So pumped, Keith. I can't even put it into words to be a part of the team and that you guys believed in us. So excited to continue to do this show with you and then launch that show later this evening as we record this on Monday morning.
Yes, every Monday night, 8:30 live. You and John, and folks, if you're not familiar with the Preferred Lines show, 2 very sharp guys, but very entertaining and very good at educating the masses on what the odds board means, the trends, pop culture in golf, current events. And, I have a sneaky feeling that this week in golf is going to be unlike any other. I think the Sony Open, which is it is a kickoff. So that's going to be big enough on its own. But between your announcement, everything that we're doing at Read the Line, and of course, whatever else the PGA Tour might talk about this week, I think it's going to be an interesting week. And you know what else is going to be interesting is what we're going to go through today. So obviously, we're going to go through takeaways from last week. Both you and I were in the SoFi Center. We're going to preview match 4, which is coming on Tuesday night. That's right, New York versus Jupiter Links. First time we're going to see them. And then, some takeaways, best bets, of course, for that match, where you're leaning, where I'm leaning. And then I know you'll be in the house for match 4, SoFi Center. Always great to be on the grounds, and one of the reasons that's important is that I remember last week you came out with a great live prop bet, got her up over Oberg, right? On the stinger was the shot of the match. You pulled it away 3-1. And basically that prop bet was won off the tee.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. We actually both drilled both of our bets. You obviously were all over Atlanta. We talked about that in the show. We talked about how the stinger hole was a much more comfortable option for Chris Gotterup, and now he was the more equipped player to pull that shot off. So it's super exciting and fun, Keith, to see that stuff come to fruition. I mean, pull it off is an understatement. The guy hit it 14 feet total in the air, and it went 300 yards long down that hole. So easy win there. Nice to kind of scoop that up and fill some pockets. Hopefully we can run it back this week.
I tell you what, I'm definitely somebody who can remember the guys hitting a 1-iron, and I haven't seen one of those in a long time. It was super cool to see live. There's no doubt about that. And speaking of live, we're going to have the big cat. So from what I'm hearing and what you're hearing inside the SoFi Center for match number 4. Now, he won't be playing, folks. Calm your jets. But Joe, I want to talk to you about the fact that Tiger Woods is going to be on the sidelines. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be mic'd up, part of the broadcast. What are you most looking forward to when it comes to seeing Tiger, getting around or hearing from him? Will we get any kind of allusions to when we might see him out in the field of play on the PGA Tour? What are you thinking about when it comes to Tiger? Because he's going to be around.
It's just fun to see him, man. Fun to have him back in the SoFi Center. We've known about this for a couple weeks, but he's going to be a major part and on the Jupiter Lynx bench the entire season. He's going to be mic'd up, not only corresponding with the players, but as part of the coverage, like you mentioned. And I don't have to tell you this, Keith, because you may be more familiar with the aura that comes with Tiger Woods in a room. But his presence will be felt there, and it just kind of elevates the experience for everyone in attendance. I'm not sure your odds on this, but from speaking to the people at TGL, he has not ruled out the opportunity to play this year. I think the odds on that are pretty slim. Where would you put it? Would you bet on Tiger teeing it up this year in TGL, or is he just going to be part of the broadcast?
Well, I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that no team has more questions surrounding them coming into season 2. You know, that Kevin Kisner is on the team. We have Tiger Woods. We're not sure if he's going to play. Max Homa had really struggled last year. Tom Kim, he also kind of fell off in his play. So here's a team where there's a lot of questions. So to directly answer your Tiger question there, I think it really comes down to is how long can Jupiter Lynx extend this season? Because if they don't win a couple matches early, I don't see Tiger risking it. But if they get a chance to get into the playoffs, and I know, folks, this is the TGL. I'm not trying to get into the hyperbole world here, but Tiger's a very competitive guy. This is his team. And who knows? Maybe they add another very famous South Florida resident to play on this team. And if that 5-time major winner was out there alongside Homa, alongside an Akshay or something like that, and Tiger saw a run for the playoffs and all of this hype was building around this team as we get further into the PGA Tour season, I think he takes a chance, but I'm with you right now. I think the odds are very slim. I think we're going to see him at each and every Jupe Links match. I think that we're going to hear him mic'd up. I think we're going to get tons of feedback. We're going to get tons of interaction between him and the guys, and also him and Matt Barry in the broadcast, which I think is all good. And, I want to take you back to last week because there's a number of things, and Jupiter Links was victim of this, but we saw it again. And part of my takeaways that I wanted to bring up with you, because you study the Hammer and the team managers more so than anyone that I know in the media center, that when I'm sitting with watching live in the arena, you're always pointing towards the benches when all the action is down at the green zone. You're like, Keith, look over there, right? It was another week where there was Hammer mismanagement by the Bay and Atlanta Drive. They took advantage. They won match 3. What are your takeaways from the Atlanta Drive versus the Bay last week when Atlanta Drive goes 2-0?
Yeah, a couple of takeaways from last week. It was exciting. Obviously, there was plenty of buzz in the building. You were there early for the announcement of the WTGL, which is exciting stuff as they venture into a new frontier of the league, which we'll see next year. But in terms of the match itself, I mean, Atlanta just gets it, man, on a different level. The strategy, the form, and then they go out there and execute to a high degree. We had chip-ins from Gotterup and Cantlay. Obviously, Horschel did his thing and made his putts. I noticed what seemed like quite a bit of rust out of Wyndham Clark and Ludwig Oberg, who both flushed a couple of shots in the water there. But the biggest thing, like continuing to sort of beat this drum, the importance of the Hammer and properly manage it. You were there in the press conference, Keith. I asked Bay and kind of pressed them about it. And the first question that was asked there, and they quipped back pretty quickly to me. And we were 3-0 and we won all 3 of our Hammers. But all hammers aren't equal, Keith Stewart, and you know that. Just because you win them does not mean it was properly used. So that will look good in the post-season stat column for the Bay. But the fact of when they threw them on holes, they were obviously in a huge advantage to win. The biggest deteriorating factor was that they ran out, right? So they ran out of hammers at the end of the match, giving Atlanta all the power in a very close match. Thus, they win 4 points in a row, I believe, on holes 12, 13, 14, 15. It just gave the Bay no shot down the stretch because they misused those. You nailed it all week. The importance of Ben, the importance of having an analytics team, the importance of understanding that element of the game is critical to winning.
Going into that match, what didn't surprise me was that when you looked at the scorecard going in, those were holes that they chose, a succession of holes that were very difficult to hit from a greens and regulation perspective in the history of the TGL. And the best scrambling team was Atlanta. Well, I didn't think they would chip in twice, but I was pretty confident they'd chip in once and that their short game would be the difference along with that hammer play. So really that didn't surprise me, but it still surprises me that teams don't understand the hammer principle. And you brought it up right there. But even Shane Lowry was on your side, because when you asked the Bay and Wyndham took the question, he says, well, we were 3-0 on hammers. And Shane says, well, yeah, but they didn't accept any of them.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
if you don't get to play it, folks, if you don't get to play a hammer out and try to compete for those 2 points, then it's not worth throwing. And as you start to watch TGL, and Joe knows this because Joe has taught me this on several occasions, because he comes out of the booth there sitting in the arena. He'll be like, throw the hammer or don't throw the hammer. You know, it's just really good to sit next to you and some of the other guys there that are so sharp when it comes down to the management of the orange flag. I mean, that's one of my biggest surprises at this point, is that guys like the Bay, and it's a big deal this week because nobody threw more hammers last year than Jupiter Lynx, and nobody lost more of them than Jupiter Lynx. So, but coming away, we're starting week 3 right now of TGL. What are some of your biggest surprises that you've come across in the first 2 weeks watching the 3 different matches?
I think just to kind of reiterate what you just said, Keith, it seems to be there's 3 teams that really get it, and Boston has kind of embraced that this year and understood the importance, and obviously LA and Atlanta. And then there's 3 teams who still need to prove it to me on that ground. So if you need to understand that just playing good golf and hitting good shots is not enough to win these matches. You have to win the strategy as well. You can't disadvantage and put your team behind the 8 ball because you mismanage having the opportunity to win double the points on certain holes. There are only 15 holes. The majority of those are going to be ties. So if you can sneak a 2-pointer, it is massive in terms of giving yourself a better win equity at the end of the day. So that's the biggest surprising thing to me. All these teams are eventually going to come around because they're going to realize, but the fact that it hasn't happened sooner for some of these teams, and we'll see New York again on Tuesday, who I thought misplayed it to the nth degree in their first match. We'll see if we see any improvement there, because this needs to change if these teams want to make a run at season 2.
Folks, if you're ever curious why I always introduce Joe as the TGL expert, rewind the tape right there. He just broke it down for you. If you want to wager on the TGL, those are the types of edges that you need. Teams are only going to win by a couple of points. Most of these matches are going to be very tight. It's not a ball striking strategy at this point. It's how you can do the gameplay. And Joe broke it down there great, which is why I love every week Joe's rankings. Joe, let's do it. All right, Joe, I don't find it unique that the teams sitting at the top 3 of your board are the teams you just mentioned when it comes to hammer strategy. But give me some trends. What's going on here? Week 3, we're starting 6 down to 1, big movers. What do you got for me?
Yeah, I guess I kind of spoiled the reveal of the power rankings here in the previous segment. But yeah, back here, I am excited to see Jupiter, the hometown team here coming out of Palm Beach County. Want to see if they can make a move, but until they show me something, they've got to remain in the 6th spot. I move Atlanta Drive now 2-0. Atlanta has won 9 of their 10 TGL matches now in the history of the league. They've got to be in that number 1 spot. I'll put Boston right behind them because I was supremely impressed with how they were able to compete the other night when we saw them. LA there at 3. New York's going to take the 4 spot. I think New York is supremely talented and has 4 really good players who understand the league. Just want to see them kind of embrace some of the strategy element a little bit more to vault them up into that next category. Bay at 5, Jupiter at 6. But Keith, if I could draw a gap between 3 and 4 here, it would be the Grand Canyon. And it all comes down to that hammer strategy that we spoke about. So there are 3 teams playing TGL in this rankings. There are 3 teams hitting shots into a simulator. And that's kind of how it breaks down this week for me.
I just have one quick question to go, because this is, you broke that down perfectly. But Jupiter Lynx wins tonight. They could jump to 4 very quickly, couldn't they?
Absolutely. They could jump to 4. I still have roster concerns. Like you mentioned, we could be potentially receiving some news that could alter the free agency period for Jupiter in terms of pickups pretty soon. But right now in a position, Tom Kim's going to have to compete a lot of weeks over there early in the season because he did not have a good year. He's at the Sony this week, which is why he's not in the lineup. And he was one of their better players last year, to be honest. So the fact they've got to insert Kevin Kisner, who is essentially a full-time broadcaster now, Tiger on the bench, there are a lot of concerns. I do love the influx of Akshay Bhatia, but I think immediately, not only is he the number one spot in terms of who we're going to see first for Jupiter on Tuesday night, I think he's their best player right now. So that was a big acquisition for them. If they can utilize the strategy of the game, and if they made that adjustment during the offseason, they have the opportunity to move up here.
I tell you what, if you look at that lineup, they went against New York in last year in match 9, mid-February, and they lose 10-3, and they get basically boat raced, right? They have to make some changes. I think what you said there about Akshay makes sense. I also think that Max Homa, he could come back, worked with Mark Blackburn in the fall. We saw signs of life in his ball striking. So Kisner's still an anchor, but we'll see how things work out. It's definitely time for the match 4 preview.
That is Tiger at his best.
I mentioned it right there before the transition slide. New York, 10-3 over these guys last year. Of course, it was Jupe Links with a team that had a lineup of Tiger Woods 2 weeks after the passing of his mother. We had Kevin Kisner, who was sculling bunker shots. A lot was going on with that team. Seemed like a lot of off the arena stuff. So, I am very excited to see how this comes back. The lineup card is out, Joe. So we're going to have New York Golf Club has the honor. So I'll go through them first. Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler played in every match for New York last year. He'll be followed by Matt Fitzpatrick and Cameron Young. And then on the Jupiter Link side, we've got Akshay Bhatia, Max Homa, and Kevin Kisner. Reactions to the lineup.
Love the addition of Bhatia. Spoke about it earlier. He's their best player right away in terms of potential right now to have a great year. What I think of what I expect out of his improvement this season with Griner caddying for him. We talked about this on the Mayo show where I maybe reached to grab him a little in the draft early. But this is pretty lopsided, man, especially when you look toward the end. You stick Kisner against Cam Young as kind of that anchor spot in hole 15 when it could potentially matter. How about the singles matchup in number 2, Keith? I know you spoke high. This is like the Blackburn Bowl in the number 2 spot here. You spoke highly about Matt Fitzpatrick to me privately, and how you credited Mark with a lot of his late 2025 improvement. Max, as of November, is back with Blackburn, who got him all the way up to number 5 in the OWGR. It seems like, years ago, but it was just 2 years ago where he had Max playing really, really well. Excited to kind of see and kind of hopeful for a bounce back year because of that for Max Homa in 2026. So I'll be paying close attention to how he looks. Is the swing in sync? Can he kind of dial that in on Tuesday night? But in terms of lopsided talent, I think it favors heavily on the New York side.
Real quick, when you talk about the favored, underdog value of this FanDuel odds board, right? Minus 138 right now, New York, plus 110 Jupiter. And is a quick PSA for everyone. This happened last week. The odds board and the brokers at these different books are just throwing out a line when the lineups are released. If you do not like that line, you need to wait till very close until match time. And then you need to kind of survey the situation a little bit. I'm not saying you need to watch this every 5 minutes, people, but when it flipped last week and Atlanta Drive was plus 100, and then suddenly the Bay was favored when the live kind of went active on Tuesday before during match day, just pay attention to those things a little bit. And one of the things I'm paying attention to, and you brought it up there, the Blackburn Bowl. I love the way you coined that. Again, another TGL expert, notch in your cap there, Mr. Idone. Fitzpatrick, 2-0 in his first match this year, where last year he was a singles liability. He was 2-0 in singles in the first match against the Atlanta Drive. Homa's going to have to get his act together. But for me, the matchup of the night where Jupiter has to do something, and you know where I'm going with this, Cam Young versus Kevin Kisner. Talk to me.
Look, it's as lopsided as you can put 2 players probably in the TGL, but I say that to say this, it's 2 holes. They're going to go head to head, right? Sure. If Kisner ties those holes, that is a win for Jupiter. Can he tie 2 holes on a sim against Cam Young? The answer is yes. Is the answer likely? Probably not. He'll be the anchor kind of in that match. Obviously, I think, I'll bring up the course here now, Keith, as well, if you don't mind.
Awesome.
Cam Young's going to hit the tee shot against Kisner on 2 of the 5 par 5s, including the final hole, which is Sterling there. They will play that hole, one-on-one in singles. That's got to be a massive advantage spot for Cam Young. He's also going to hit the tee shot on the Big Apple, which is their home hole for the New York team. Both very long par 5s that he's going to be able to get to in 2, which I think Kisner leaves his team in a spot on 9 and has to play it himself on 15, which is going to be very difficult for him to come close to that green into. 3-shot holes for Team Kiz, 2-shot holes for Team Cam. The par 5 is where the majority of the scoring takes place in TGL. It's the biggest opportunity to put points on the board. So another advantage to New York. Like you mentioned, in terms of the odds, they do move. The books limit the amount that you can place down early in the week because they don't want to overexpose themselves to this stuff. But I have to feel, Keith, like the majority of the money is going to come in on the side of New York. And it seems like a fair price to lay, given what we've seen last year and given the discrepancy in, I think, ability.
I mean, there's no doubt there. But, something I came across this week is that we've seen 6 home team holes played in the first 3 matches, one for each side. No home team has lost their home hole, and 4 times the team has won it. So kind of that home field advantage, if there's such a thing in simulator golf, it's actually taking place, which I thought is kind of cool. The managers are going to have to pay attention to that. We've got Chris Wilson managing on the New York side. I know you always love to pay attention to stuff. We've got Rob McNamara managing on the Jupiter Links side. Of course, like I said, Tiger Woods is going to be right there on the bench. You're looking at the golf course right there. Are there any specific sections of the scorecard that stick out to you? I mean, I'm sure Stinger's there, but you got to break down the golf course a little bit for me. One thing I did notice, a big lean towards Jupiter Links. This golf course is only 5,836 yards. That's 147 yards shorter than even last week. It's the shortest golf course in any match this year. That's got to be somewhat of an edge for Jupiter Links, right?
Yeah, they set it up shorter. They have some of the more demanding holes from an accuracy perspective in terms of, you look at Lute on the line there, hole 11, which is extremely narrow. The Jupe Life, the first time we're going to get to see this new hole design that is Jupiter Links home holes, really pinches in severely at around the 300-yard mark, I think, to kind of build in a little bit of a team advantage for their squad, who is more accuracy based. And then you've got to hit a narrow target in terms of heading into the green, or you're going to end up in the Bay of Jupiter next to the lighthouse there, swimming with the dolphins as they play in the arena. But yeah, you mentioned it, shorter golf course. It seems like a lot of the par 5s are more conducive to the shorter hitting team, maybe to keep this match close. I'm interested, as always, as I love to talk about Stinger, Keith.
Yep.
We get 2 of the lower ball trajectory hitters on the PGA Tour. Both Homa and Matthew Fitzpatrick can hit it very low. Fitz is extremely comfortable with this shot. We talked about it with Chris Gotterup last week. Fitz, by PGA Tour standards, over 640 drives measured in the 2025 season. 78% of them would be considered low trajectory by PGA Tour standards. He's comfortable hitting that shot. He's comfortable hitting it left. Homa's not far off there, but 2 guys who I think are well equipped to keep it under the rock on number 8.
I tell you what, it's going to be a little bit of a precursor of what we're going to see out of Max Homa if he can really control his trajectory on specific shots there in the simulator, because he's just definitely one of those guys coming into when you talk about comeback stories or bounce back factor. Matt Fitzpatrick was trending up. Max Homa, we weren't so sure. And, we weren't so sure when it came to Jupiter Links coming into this preview. We've seen the golf course. We've talked about the lineup cards. We know who the managers are. Where do you see the advantage as we do this preview show? Which side do you like? Where are you leaning for match number 4 of TGL season 2?
Yeah, I'm going to be all over New York Golf Club. We've just for all the reasons that we've mentioned previously in the show. I think they hold an advantage because Akshay is great, but as we've seen with TGL, it is a unique environment. We've seen newcomers come in and have success. We've seen some of them struggle, but what we do know is the bunkers and the chipping and the scrambling around the green take some time to get used to playing indoors with that style turf. And this league in matches are won and lost, scrambling, and on the green. So you mentioned Ricky Fowler. He played more TGL holes than any other player in season 1. He goes up against a guy who has never played a TGL hole. Then you have Fitz versus Homa in the 2 slot. Fitz is currently playing much better golf. Cam Young, Kiz. We don't need to speak about that one anymore. I give New York an advantage in nearly all 3 individual matchups, making 138 pretty palatable for me in terms of the betting board. How about you?
At the risk of being redundant, I'm going to go New York myself. I'll outline a couple other reasons why. Number one, the experience factor, but I'm going to take it to another level. 9 of the 15 holes that they're playing in match 4, they already played in match 1. The experience factor is there for New York. They have played them live this season. If you want to talk about last season and experience for Jupiter Links, 8 of the holes that they played in their match last year, head to head, where New York won 10-3. 8 of those 15 are the same holes that we're seeing tonight. So there's a lot of crossover there. And the other factor for me comes down to the hammer. Yes, you talk about the head-to-head matchups. We give leans in all of those. That makes sense. Crazy things can happen when it comes to professional golf, but the hammer play really, really concerns me. And I'm not going to lie to you, Joe, and you know I love the guy, but Tiger doesn't know what he's doing with the hammer. He proved that last year.
No.
Tiger's
always been so much better than everyone else that the strategy element in little gambling games haven't mattered probably much in his career, because he always probably just takes on minus EV bets, but he's good enough to overcome that. I think that may kind of work against Jupiter Links, and they were very questionable in a lot of their decisions in season 1. We'll see if that changes Tuesday night.
Yeah, Joe, years ago at Isleworth, in my days with Tiger, right? There was many a match there, and there is never an opportunity to hammer. You just don't live in that world. So he never has to experience the ups and downs and that press type style mindset. With him on the side, if he wasn't on the sideline, maybe I'd give him a chance. But how are one of those guys going to say yes or no when Tiger says hammer? And he better have learned some better strategy from last year. So I'm on the New York side for sure.
Yep, same here. We line.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to get out of here. This is another episode of the TGL show. Of course, if you love this, I mean, you can listen on Spotify, iTunes. You can watch it on YouTube. You can consume it anywhere you want. I've got to thank you, my co-host there, Mr. Joe Idone. Of course, we've got to thank the TGL team for all of their support, Golf Space Collective for helping us put together some of this production materials, and of course, all of you for watching week in and week out. And speaking of which, if you want to watch something great, you better check out my boys, John and Joe, and the Preferred Line Show on Monday nights, 8:30 live. The broadcast, they'll be covering the Sony Open this week, the Amex next week, every single week. These guys are super sharp, but above all else, there's a lot of sharp material out there. These guys are very, very entertaining. And that's why I wanted to make them a part of the Read the Line family. I know what kind of the ethos of our community is like, our culture, and these guys fit in absolutely perfectly. In fact, I truly believe they're going to enhance it, and they're going to make me a sharper person in 2026. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
We've got some fun stuff lined up for tonight. We've already started doing the research. Can't wait to get in there with John. Can't wait to be at TGL Tuesday. As always, when we record this show, a lot of the prop bets and a lot of the individual stuff is not released yet. I will be on the turf before the match. Make sure that you stay tuned into all the all the Read the Line various social channels where we'll put that video out, giving my prop selection for Jupiter versus New York. Excited to be there Tuesday. Excited for tonight, 2026. Let's go, Keith Stewart.
I'll be tuned in for Joe's picks. I'll be tuned in for match 4. And of course, we want you tuned in next week for the preview of match 5 and for the rest of the TGL season. I'm your host of the TGL show, Keith Stewart. He's Joe Idone. Peace.